Very few players are ever undraftable in fantasy football. If they fall far enough, there's probably some opportunity to land them at what you believe is a fair price. But each year, a handful of players at every position become overvalued for one reason or another, whether it's pure rookie hype or a huge final few weeks of the season vaulting them to the top of everyone's rankings. There are plenty of reasons to consider avoiding these players at their current ADP. I'm Dave Loughran with Awesemo.com, counting down the top 3 overvalued running backs to avoid in your drafts. But before we get started, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Let's dive into it. JK Dobbins is a very good running back, but that might not be enough to warrant an early third-round ADP in 2021. The Ravens took a significant but predictable step back on offense last season, dropping them from first in points per game to 9th. Lamar Jackson still had 159 rushing attempts, though, which ranked first among all quarterbacks by a pretty wide margin. And although the Ravens finished first in team rushing attempts for the third straight year, there's still reason to believe that won't be enough for Dobbins this season. Of Baltimore's league-leading 555 attempts last year, 29% of them went to Jackson, 26% to Gus Edwards, 24% to Dobbins, 13% to Mark Ingram, and the remaining 8% were spread around. Even with Ingram playing extremely limited to no snaps over the final 10 games of the season, Dobbins still only averaged 12.1 carries per game. Edwards wasn't far behind him at 9.6, even though Dobbins was on the field more often. What's more concerning is the Ravens targeted their running backs only 62 times in the passing game last year, good for the second lowest clip in football, and Dobbins saw only 24 targets across 15 games. So while Ingram is gone and Dobbins has a full year of experience under his belt, we'd be remiss to overlook some of these red flags. Edwards just inked a 2-year extension. The Ravens run the ball a ton, but there's no clear workhorse running back and won't be for as long as Jackson is under center. And Baltimore just drafted a wide receiver in the first and fourth rounds. Dobbins is an ultra-talented running back who averaged 6 yards per attempt and scored 9 touchdowns in his rookie season. But Edwards has averaged 5.2 yards per attempt for his career, and Jackson is on an entirely different level than anyone else at his position. And as far as red zone carries go, Jackson led the team with 32, followed by 28 from Dobbins and 26 from Edwards. So while I'm in love with Dobbins' talent, I'm hating the inevitable 3-way split we're going to see here in the run game all year long. I'd rather draft Chris Carson or Miles Sanders in this range or target one of the many strong wide receiving options that will still be on the board. It was sure disappointing to see Adrian Peterson get more usage in the run game than DeAndre Swift last year, but that's often par for the course when it comes to rookie running backs. I'm not sure how much different 2021 is going to look, though. The Lions signed Jamal Williams in the offseason and plan to use him by the sound of it. Lions offensive coordinator Anthony Lynn called Williams a classic A-back in an interview with The Athletic last month, going on to say that he can leave those types of backs in for all 3 downs. This isn't at all to say that Williams should be projected as the Lions' bell cow this season, but more so to suggest that Swift shouldn't be projected as one either. Swift is being drafted in the early 3rd round right now, which seems insane given the circumstances. And it's not just about Williams. Even though drafting a running back in the 3rd round who's almost certainly in line for a 50-50 split on the ground, if not worse, is the easiest reason to avoid Swift there is. But the Lions have the 2nd lowest Vegas win total in the NFL heading into the season, ahead of only the rudderless Texans. And they lost a fantasy-friendly quarterback in Matthew Stafford who can push the ball downfield and create enough red zone opportunities for a good running back to succeed. So while Swift averaged 4.6 yards per attempt and found the end zone a total of 10 times in 13 games last year, it's hard not to expect some regression. Jared Goff is a clear fantasy downgrade from Stafford, and the Lions' top weapons in the passing game outside of TJ Hawkinson are Brashad Perriman, Tyrell Williams, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is almost guaranteed to be one of the lower scoring offenses in the league, and Swift should suffer as a result. He hauled in 46 passes for 357 yards and 2 scores on 57 targets last year, but I'm not sure that'll be enough to pay off his 3rd-round capital. There are just too many warning signs with Swift right now. Mainly the heavy presence of Jamal Williams, a likely bottom-ranked offense, and expected touchdown regression. Swift converted an insane 40% of his red zone carries into touchdowns last year, but still saw 21% fewer red zone carries than Adrian Peterson. As you can see, I'm perfectly fine. Actually, I'm adamant about passing on these timeshare backs in the 3rd round, especially when there are plenty of strong alternatives at both the running back and wide receiver positions. And in Swift's case, He won't even be playing on a talented offense like Dobbins. He just has more upside in the passing game. And time for an honorable mention. I originally had Cam Akers to take the number 1 spot in these rankings, not because he won't have a strong season in Los Angeles, but because his ADP has recently skyrocketed into the first round over at Underdog Fantasy. I'm a fan of Akers, but outside of one monster rushing performance against the Patriots in Week 14, he was either modestly effective or scarcely used throughout the year. So we're essentially banking on the final quarter of Akers' 2020 season, where he took over the lead back role and averaged 4 yards per attempt and found the end zone only once. Granted, Akers was clearly hobbled in that Week 17 performance against Arizona, and I think he's a strong candidate to have a breakout season. I really like this kid. I'm just very unwilling to take that chance at 10th overall. I'm also not huge on the fact that Akers was able to convert only 2 of his 21 carries inside the 10-yard line into touchdowns, and only 1 of 9 inside the 5-yard line into a score. Before we get to our number 1 overvalued running back for 2021, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. And if you're watching this video on our main daily fantasy channel, you'll be excited to hear that we just launched the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel right here on YouTube, bringing you exclusively fantasy football content all year long. Like I said, I was originally going to feature Cam Akers in the number 1 do not draft running back, at his ADP of course, until I saw where Travis Etienne was being drafted. I actually released the top rookie running back video a couple weeks ago that featured Etienne in the number 2 spot, but never imagined his stock would climb as much as it did in such a short period of time. Upon recording that video, Etienne was nowhere close to an ADP of 52. 52nd overall for a rookie running back in a rotation with James Robinson and Carlos Hyde, no matter how you feel about them, feels pretty outrageous. While I'm admittedly not the biggest fan of Robinson or obviously Hyde, we'd all be crazy to ignore the impact they're going to have on the Jaguars' backfield, especially early in the season. Even if Etienne takes over as the lead back later in the year, you're still drafting him early in the 5th round as a rookie runner who has absolutely no definitive role in this offense. But he does have the fact that the Jaguars drafted him in the 1st round going for him. There's no doubt Etienne is going to be utilized early on, but to what extent is entirely unknown. And Urban Meyer already referred to Robinson and Hyde as his 1-2 punch, with Etienne being the 3rd down back. Coach speak can be entirely meaningless, like Meyer also saying he loves that guy and couldn't think of a harder worker when referring to Robinson. But none of that matters when you consider where Etienne is being drafted. Let me put it into perspective. James Conner has a late 9th round ADP right now as a running back who will probably see more opportunities, especially early on, than Etienne, and is playing for a team that's projected to be significantly better on offense. It's also a reason to steer clear of Chase Edmonds at 68th overall and wait for Conner. Even Michael Carter, whose ADP sits at 88th overall, could have an easier time finding increased work as a 4th round rookie than Etienne, playing on a Jets team whose backfield has 0 depth or reliable talent. Now, I'm not saying I'd draft Carter over Etienne straight up, but I'd happily take him at 88 before I take Etienne at 52. I think you get the point. There's plenty of upside with Etienne, especially as a receiver. But we shouldn't be drafting a running back in the 5th round to be exclusively a receiver when actual receivers like Cooper Kupp and Adam Thielen are still available. I'm excited about Etienne's future in the NFL, but I'll wait another year before adding him to my rosters if drafting him means reaching by several rounds. Thanks for watching, and be sure to head to awesemo.com for all of your fantasy football needs. We'll see you back here for the next one.